Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another Kenny Cars and Coffee with me, Kenny Brown, your host for the next hour or so, where we'll be talking some tech. This is going to be a really action-packed episode this morning. We got lots to talk about. In fact, we got lots to talk about. A few things came up last week that we put on top of this week, so it's going to be like an extra bonus for you today because we've got on the schedule. Okay, we had some questions about improving traction and forward bite, what that's all about. So I'll do a little overview of what forward traction is about and what anti-squat's about. Last weekend we did we're a special guest at Cruise Indy, which is a big event here in Indianapolis, and Mike Charles brought over the number 19 86 Celine, our Mustang, for the show, and we got to talking, and it's kind of like he has had some interest, and we've had some interest. So we thought we'd talk a little bit about my early Celine days, like in 1986, how that whole program started. See the Celine poster up there? So that's on the agenda for today. We're going to touch on, we did the K-Link preview last week, to great reviews. Speed Therapy Academy, another Speed Therapy Academy is coming up. And we've also, seats for track driving. A seat is important. Once you get beyond intermediate into the advanced stage, a good seat and restraint system are really important. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. And of course, we've got questions that came in from the Speed Therapy Society, Kenny Brown Speed Therapy Society private Facebook group. Got it all in. And if you're not a member, I strongly suggest that you think about joining. There's a lot of like-minded people there. And I'm struggling with my voice and some asthma this morning, so I may need to take a break periodically. If I do, my lovely host, Carrie, will jump right in and fill the space so you don't hear me coughing and there's dead airspace. See what I mean? I got my water here. I also got my coffee. And of course, you can send in questions live. We'll answer them at the end. And if you have questions on the Celine, once we start talking about the Celine a little bit, send your questions into the comments, and we'll pick them up at the end. For people who have been with us, know that that's one of the cool things about this is I share my extensive 50 plus years of professional motorsports and building great cars to give you what I would consider quality and accurate information. The whole reason I started this a long time ago was the fact that there's so much misinformation out there. I tell people the two worst places to get information about your car are the paddock and the internet. So that's why we kind of started this. For those of you that may not are new to it, it's kind of what it's all about. I share what I know. If I don't know it, I'll tell you. But I really want you guys to get accurate information based off of my experience, not something I heard or something I read, but real honest to goodness experience. And for those that also might be new, over here to my right is my trusty toolbox. Now, the reason we kind of keep that up here is so that you can see how I differentiate myself from everybody else in the aftermarket. First of all, I know this stuff. I made my living out of my toolbox for years. And so I know cars inside out, upside down, and backwards. Won seven national championships in SCCA Pro Racing with Mustangs. And plus I've worked at Indy 500, Daytona 500, 24 hours of Daytona. So I've got a lot of experience, and that's what I share with you. That toolbox I've had for a very long time, and that toolbox and me have been to just about every major racetrack in North America, many of them more than twice, and also up into Canada. We won the 24 Hours of Canada twice, 86 and 87, and we'll talk about that a little later on. So I got so much to talk about, I just don't know where to start. I think maybe let's talk about, we got a couple of questions. There were some pretty good questions. We got some other questions that we're going to put off to next week, so we'll get to that in a minute. So where should I start? I think I'll start with, let's talk about seats. And for the track day guys, once you get beyond novice into intermediate and you're getting serious, aside from your safety equipment, your helmet, your gloves, and your shoes, remember, gloves and shoes are every bit as important as your helmet as far as I'm concerned. you need to be thinking about seats and restraints, keeping yourself in the seat. Once people don't realize how much you actually use your knee, your hip, your elbows to keep yourself in the seat. You're going around corners, you're kind of bracing yourself all over the place. Well, if you don't have to brace yourself, all of a sudden you can focus more on your driving. And seats, I got to tell you, this past season, getting driving seats has been like trying to find hen's teeth. They've been coming in really, really slowly. A lot of them are coming from overseas, and the issues they've had over there. So they have huge delivery issues. So we finally have gotten some seats that we're using that worked out really well. So I want to touch on that for a little bit. This is a seat we just kind of brought into our system because some of our other seats are just on continual back order. But the thing about a good driving seat you need to be thinking about is you want that seat to help hold you in place. You don't want to brace yourself. You want the seat to do the work for you, and then also the harnesses. Well, this is a good typical, what I call a sports seat. I look at seats in three categories: a sports seat, a club seat, and then a race seat. Now, a sports seat is something that the back actually goes up and down, so that you can kind of have some adjustment to it, and you can get in and out of the car pretty easy. Now, a club seat, that moves up a notch. That's if you're really serious. And a club seat is more of a shell. It's a one-piece seat. It's fixed, and you have to use a different type of a mount for it. You get mounts that have a whole bunch of holes in the side, so you can tip it up, back, move it all over the place. And of course, race seats will have like a halo, and I strongly recommend against a race seat for track days, unless you've got a removable steering wheel. Getting in and out with your helmet on in a race seat can be a real challenge. So for most people, a good club seat is really what you're looking for. And the important parts of a club seat is, Carrie, can you pull the little thing off the bottom so I can show the seat bottom here, the show and tell part? There we go. Okay, what we're looking for, and this is hard to see because it's black, you've got these bolsters on either side to hold your hips in place. You've also got these shoulder bolsters, and it's deep. You kind of sit into it. So just sitting in the seat alone makes a huge difference. Now, it's like the first time you drive with a good set of harnesses or a good seat, you're totally amazed what a difference it makes, because all of a sudden you're focusing on driving, not trying to hold yourself in place. Now, this is kind of a high-level restraint system, and we got from our good friends at Impact, we've been carrying for our advanced people. And this is a 6-point restraint system: the 2 shoulders, the 2 laps, and the double crotch belt. A lot of people call this an anti-submarine belt. They think that the reason for that is so you don't slide underneath it with an impact. Well, that's not the case. And we had in the Speed Therapy Academy, we had a master class on restraints, and Ben O'Connor from Impact came in and talked to us about the structure of a seat belt, how they're designed, how it's supposed to work, how you're supposed to have them in the car. And this has more to do with keeping the lap belt right across the center above your hips, so that it doesn't move around. It keeps that in place. So, and this is, if you're doing any kind of belt like this, I always go for the cam lock. This is hard to see because it's black. Everything disappears in black. But cam lock is just one simple click, and everything comes apart. Okay, now we also have for track day people I call a rally harness. That it's actually a 4-point, and instead of having all the pieces that plug in, it just hooks together like a regular seat belt. And that for just normal track day, that's a good combination too. So we finally got these seats. It's an interesting part. These come from the UK, and we had them originally. They came in, but they had the wrong seat bottoms on it. There was no hole in the seat bottom for the submarine, for the crotch strap. So they had to, it was a big mistake. So we just got the seat bottoms in, I think, Thursday. So we put it together, and I thought I'd show it to you. But I'm really happy with the seat. It's good material. It's really strong, really, really comfortable. And if you're looking for a decent seat for your track day car, or even for the street, you don't have to be on track to enjoy a really good seat. Now, I know some of the new Mustangs come with Recaros, which are great. But if your car doesn't come with Recaros, this is a pretty good option, because even driving around town, even on a long trip, it becomes very, very comfortable. So that's kind of a little bit on seats and harness belts. And like I say, in the academy, we do a whole evening is dedicated to restraints and how they all work. And of course, what I don't have here that we also highly recommend once you get beyond novice is a Hans device or head and neck shoulder restraint. If you always want to prepare for the worst. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. And I strongly recommend anybody that's advanced for sure, you should have a Hans device to protect yourself. And again, in the academy, we went through when we're talking about safety, we actually had some pictures and videos of what happens with and without a Hans device in a forward impact. So there's a couple of tips on our track type stuff. Let's see, we have a little sip of water here. I think before we talk about going to the early civilian days, we've had a couple people inquire about like forward bite. They don't understand what, why Mustangs don't hook up, why they spin their tires. And it all has to do with something called anti-squat. Okay, what is anti-squat? Okay, when a car accelerates, the weight shifts to the back and the back of the car goes down. That would be considered squat. And what anti-squat does, it controls how much the car drops before it on the springs, before it starts putting weight on the rear tires. And weight on the rear tires is what gives you grip. And the amount of anti-squat controls the percentage of which the car will drop before it starts putting weight on the rear tires. Now, this is kind of like a really basic drawing. In the academy, we spend 2 weeks just talking about suspension geometry and get into this pretty heavily. But in a nutshell, okay, we've got, I don't know if you can see this, we got a back tire, we got a front tire. This is the ground, okay, and this goes from the bottom of the rear tire to the center of gravity in the car. This is, not to scale, let's put it that way. And that's 100% anti-squat. And above that would be more than 100% anti-squat, below that would be less. And I don't know if you've ever seen like some drag cars. I'm not big on drag racing, but I know you see some of the classes of drag cars, when they let the clutch out and go, the whole back of the car pops up in the air. Well, that means they've got more than 100% anti-squat, so they're trying to put all that weight on the rear tires super fast, which is why they pop up. Well, we don't want to do that. I mean, we want to have a good compromise of squat. And actually, anti-squat comes from something called the instant center. Now, I just kind of drew this. These are like, if you take the lower control arms and you draw them out. Now, with a Mustang, if you lower a Mustang and you would take the control arms and draw them out to the point they meet, they're actually below ground. And that's like as long ways from 100% anti-squat, which is why back of the Mustang will light the tires up so easily. So what we do in my AGS 4.0, my advanced geometry suspension system, 4th gen, that's for S197 Mustangs, we've got the rear grip kit. And all the pieces of the rear grip are engineered to work with every other piece of the rear grip kit. So we completely alter the entire rear suspension geometry. Now, I won't get into all of that today, because I just talked about anti-squat. But that's why my suspension has 3 components: a rear grip kit, front grip kit, and springs and shocks. And the reason I do that, because it's a system, it's an engineered system. All the components are engineered collectively to work as a unit to improve handling. And in this case, we're just going to talk about squat or forward bite. So if you, what you really want to do is you don't want your instant center, and that's the point of conversion of those 2 control arms. You don't want it below ground. You want it somewhere up in this range. So it's a matter of changing the angle of the lower control arms to come up and down. I'm not going to tell you exactly where my instant center is, because it's something that we worked at for years and years. Like I say, this is the 4th generation. But the way I affect the instant center and the anti-squat are two simple pieces at AGS 4.0. The axle brackets, which actually lowers the rear pickup point of the lower control arm. And this is my axle bracket. I know you've seen axle brackets out there that are big and clunky. They got a big bar that comes up the back. They got a gazillion holes. With mine, it's like 1 hole. I've done all the research. I've done all the engineering and development, and I set the instant center to where it's going to work best. So there's only 1 hole. So there's nothing to mess with. You just put it up. And something interesting about axle brackets is you see them everywhere now. We were the first people to bring axle brackets to the market. I'm thinking somewhere around 1990, 89, 90, 91, somewhere in there. And they've been copied by just about everybody. So another first by me that's been copied. And the other part of that is our upper control arm module. And I say module because it's not, you can't buy just a control arm. This is a kit. It's a module because the control arm is longer than factory and the pickup point has been moved so that I get the instant center I'm looking for to get the right amount of anti-squat I'm looking for. And the thing about this is you notice that the control arm is actually curved. I think just about every other upper control arm you'll see out there is straight. The reason it's curved is if you got a lowered car and you hit a big bump and you got a straight upper control arm, it's going to crash into the tunnel. So I don't know why other people haven't picked up on that, but we've been doing that ever since we came out with this in 2005, I believe. So that's just a real quick overview on forward bite. It all has to do with anti-squat, and anti-squat has to do with instant center. And you get the right amount of anti-squat and the car hooks up and goes. That's only one element for AGS 4.0. I think we talk about that. In fact, last week we did a kind of another introduction on my newest suspension, the AGS 4.5, which is the absolute, and I mean absolute best rear suspension available for an S197 Mustang, period. And those that saw the presentation will understand why. I think we're actually, because we still have a lot of interest in that, I think they're going to put a link up so you can still watch the presentation for a few more days, and have the opportunity to purchase 4.5, which features the K-Link, which is my new rear suspension, which is patent pending, I might point out. I've got years and years and years in developing this rear suspension, and a huge amount of investment and time, which is why we decided to patent it, because it is totally unique. In fact, it's patent pending right now. The full patent application will be filed this week, actually. So it's anybody that wants to try to copy it, don't. Our patent attorney was very, very thorough in writing this patent application, so that we're heavily protected, because this is. How good is it? That's okay. David out in the West Coast went in his Boss 302S Mustang. Okay, Ford Racing, Boss 302S, the race car. It went from the suspension that came on the car to my full AGS 4.5 Pro. That's the the 4.5 rear, 4.0 front grip kit, and the JRZ RS Pro double adjustable shocks or remote canisters. He at Sonoma, he took 8 seconds off of his best lap time. And we had a debrief that evening, and he made a couple of small shock adjustments. It took another 2 seconds off. We had Steve out in Oregon. When he went from the Boss Laguna Seca suspension to 4.0, he picked up 4 seconds. And when he upgraded to 4.5, he picked up another 4 seconds. So this suspension doesn't pick up tenths. I mean, it picks up seconds, and a lot of them. Another customer just last weekend or the weekend before at I think Hastings, which is a really short flat track, he picked up 2.7 seconds, but he said the car was kind of like pushing out in the big sweeping corners. Well, if he'd have called me, I'd have told him to make 2 clicks of rebound adjustment in the front, and he would take at least another 1.5 seconds off his lap time. So this thing is really cool. Like I say, a huge amount of work and investment, and because it's so complex, we're introducing them in lots. So lot 1 went out to just your very close friends and family. Lot 2 went out to friends and family. This is lot 3 that's coming up right now. And again, this is not being introduced to the general public. This is just kind of like our group that has the first opportunity to get this. So look for that coming up there. And so, okay, I should probably, what? I hear a voice.
Yes. First of all, on the K-Link, there should be a link if you want to receive the replay. What Kenny presented was pretty awesome. So if you have an S197, I recommend clicking on the link in the comments and registering so you get the replay. You'll have availability to it through August 3rd. Also, Kenny, what time is it? If you're just joining us.
Oh, yeah. So, well, Carrie's like she's had some health issues, so she comes at us from afar. She used to sit here and hold up signs for me all the time. So if you're just joining us, okay, I'm Kenny Brown. This is Cars and Coffee, and I'm glad you could join us this morning. We'll all spend an hour or so talking tech, answering your questions, and trying to share with you actual, like, real information based off of my 50 years in professional motorsports. And also, I just realized this morning when I was printing everything off, this is episode 70. I can't believe we're up to episode 70. And if you'd like to see some of the earlier episodes, all the episodes are in Kenny Brown Performance TV YouTube. We've got a YouTube channel, and all 70 episodes are in there. If you want to go back, there's an unbelievable amount of real accurate information. All the time we have people saying, I've never had this much information before. I've never had this kind of quality information before. And that's it. And this is the only place you're going to find it. So there, I got everything in, right? Okay.
Well, let's see.
What's
so
that?
if you guys like what Kenny's presenting, why don't you give him some thumbs up and let him know how much you like it. So let's see some thumbs up there. Also, I lost my train of thought, but I will be back, Kenny. You just go ahead and present the rest of your show.
Okay, well, I guess a little note at the bottom says, coming up next, a blast from the past, the 86 Saleen season. Now, let me pull up my little PowerPoint here. I got a lot of buttons to click. Okay, here we go. Okay, this is actually the very first Mustang I ever built. Prior to this, my background was in the 70s. I had a sports car shop. I worked on a lot of European sports cars. I also worked on a lot of SCCA Formula cars, Formula Fords, Formula Atlantics, Super Vs. So I had a lot of experience in real racing. In the early 80s, I was the U.S. Distribution and service point for the Mark Sports 2000, which is kind of like a little prototype, open cockpit prototype that used the 2-liter overhead cam Ford engine, dry sumped, and that was my background. This real racing, and an opportunity came along. I was working for a doctor friend of mine, putting his Jaguar cars together. And he also was a partnership part of a partnership in a Ford dealership. And he was out in California for a conference, and he had seen an article in a magazine about this guy that was building performance Mustangs that you could get through Ford dealers. And so he stopped and visited him. And after I spent a whole afternoon with Steve, and what came out of that was the fact that Steve had just gotten his Saleen Mustangs homologated for the SCCA Pro Endurance Racing Series. And he had the cars homologated. He had the car, but he was kind of like, where do I go from here? So long story short, Dr. Dan, my friend, came back and talked to me. I had a couple conversations with Steve on the phone. And this was like early in the season, so it's like right before the Long Beach Grand Prix. So I flew out and met with Steve. We put a deal together, we sent some money out to help build the first car and start the Saleen racing program in early '86. Now the first car was actually because it was like so close to the beginning of the season. The first race was back then it was called Sears Point. Now I think it's called Sonoma. That the first car was built at Fred's shop up in Sacramento because it was just real close to the track. Well, I went out and I took Rex, my sidekick, with me, and we built the first car in Fred's shop and did Sears Point, and then right after that was the Portland race. And we did so well. I mean, to me, looking back, it was kind of a comedy of errors, but at the time we did really well. General Tire was impressed. And the car was shipped from California, from Fred's shop back to my shop, which at the time was in Omaha. And we picked up, and then we built a second car from scratch. And so, in essence, this is the very first Mustang I ever built. And I have to put a big shout out and thanks to Steve for putting this program together and letting me participate. Because from that's kind of like, it's changed my entire career path from pure racing into racing plus aftermarket performance street cars plus racing Mustangs. So that's how it all started. And then we built the first car, and I think the first race after that was 24 hours of Nelson Ledges. And it was only like Rex and I at the time building the car. And by the time we got the Nelson Ledges, we were beyond exhausted. It was like 18, 20-hour days for weeks on end. But we made it. We didn't do that great in the first race, first endurance race. But we, Liz and a couple of people got together. They did some analysis, and we figured out that we really kind of shot ourselves in the foot on a couple of yellow flags. So we learned a lot from that. And pretty much we went on. It was like, our real starting point for the team was at Nelson Ledges. And we kind of continued on from that. I guess I don't have to be.
Hey, Kenny, I already cleared you up. So I'm showing your face, so don't worry about it.
So, from there, we didn't do that great, but it was, it was valuable. It was a valuable learning experience. But we went on, and the big thing in '86 was we won the 24 Hours of Canada, GT class of 24 Hours of Canada, which was a pretty big deal at the time. We were leading the race with a primary car, which had an accident like in the wee hours of the morning, and by the time we got it back to the pits, it was no way we could fix it and get it back on track. So what we did, we focused on the second car, which was driven by, I think, Lisa Caceres. I can't remember if Desiree was with us there that time or not. But that car, I think Desiree was there because she hit the wall, turned one wall in qualifying or practice. And unbeknownst to us, the car was fairly wounded. But nevertheless, we were only able to do about 28 minutes on a stint because we were getting starved for fuel. Well, later we found out that when she hit the wall, there's a little can in the bottom that the fuel pump sits in. It actually knocked that loose. So what was happening, it was moving the fuel pump back and forth. So when it got to a certain level of fuel, it wouldn't have pickups. We just had to have continual pit stops. So I can't remember where the car was at the time, but it was third or fourth or somewhere back in there. So we focused 100% of our efforts on that car. And I put Steve in that car, and we threw some really, really good strategy. I think, who was our strategy guy? Rick J, I think, was our strategy guy. He was brilliant. This is his friend Rick Titus. And, we kind of brought the car up front and won the race, which was huge. It was the first big win for the Saleen Mustang. First pro endurance win with the Mustang for Ford, and in that type of racing, and it was the first big win for General Tire. So everybody was happy. I was tired. Everybody was happy. So we went on and we finished out the season. We actually finished second in the points. For the first year, and me not knowing anything about Mustangs or endurance racing, I think that was we did pretty well. And then, I could come up with lots of stories, but the reason this all came up is last weekend we were at the Cruise Indy, and Mike Charles brought over the 19 Saleen Mustang that we had on display there, which was kind of cool. I think I can pull up a few more pictures here. Click all the right buttons. Okay. So this picture looks like it was at Mid-Ohio. It kind of looks like Mid-Ohio guardrails, which is another 24-hour race. And I got a story about that here in a minute. But this is last winter, I think. Mike Charles has become the caretaker and keeper and preserver of the 86, both of the 86. He now has both of the 86 Saleen R cars. And he's just a stone's throw away over in Ohio. And when he picked this one up, he had to come by and show me. And it was kind of like, oh yeah, I remember these cars. It was a long, long time ago, but it was really, really kind of cool to see it. And then last weekend at the event, he brought that, and again, just so many fond memories of Steve and Liz and Rick and Jay and all the people that were on the team. Of course, Rex, my sidekick. I couldn't have done it without Rex. And that was kind of cool. And actually, Mike had remembered more stories about the '86 season than I did. And this is, again, this has to be Mid-Ohio in the rain. And by the helmet, I would guess that's Steve driving at that point. And there was our driver lineup, Desiree, Lisa, Rick, and Steve. Pretty awesome group of people. Now, in looking at pictures, we kind of came across this, and I said, hey, Carrie, you got to pull that up because there's a story behind it. This is, if you notice, the car does not have a hood. And if you look closer, you can see a whole bunch of crumples and wrinkles and broken pieces. Well, that car happened to have an accident, again, in the wee hours of the morning, like 4 o'clock or something. And it did make it back to pit lane. And we actually rebuilt the front of the car in pit lane. We borrowed somebody's porta-power, and we actually used a porta-power to straighten out the nose of the car. It took a radiator, and we had to change a whole bunch of other parts. But it was the interesting thing is after straightening the pit line. I lined it by looking at it. We didn't have time to do an alignment. I just kind of looked at both tires and adjusted them where I thought they should be, and we sent it out. And the irony is that after that accident in this shape, the car turns at as fastest laps of the race. So that's why I had to throw that up there, because that was it's like, you have to scratch your head and figure what. Okay, and this is our '86 team. That's pretty much it. There's of course I'm the guy with all the hair. And believe it or not, I had that much hair back then. There's Rex, my sidekick. Of course, Steve, Liz, Lisa, Rick, Kim. Let's see, a lot of these people. There's my late son, Paul, who a lot of you have probably known or know of. He, after winning the Pirelli World Challenge GTS Championship in 2011, unfortunately, he succumbed to melanoma cancer in 2012, and we lost him at the peak of his career. But this is kind of a cool picture. This is a fledgling team that went on to do really, really great things, kind of like all steered by Steve and myself. And proof of concept, I think this was an article after we won the 24 Hours of Canada, I think. And notice the CB radio. We had CB radios back then. This is back in '86. Things weren't all that sophisticated, and they hardly worked any of the time, but we had them anyway. And of course, here's another front page of Mustangs Illustrated after we won 24 Hours of Canada, which was back then. It was a huge deal for everybody. Let's see. Oh, I guess that's all the pictures. I thought Carrie was going to put in the standings for that season, but looks like we didn't make it. Anyway, what we did, we actually finished second in the standings in the GT class, which was, for our first year, I thought that was pretty cool. And it was, it was a great time. Really, it was incredibly hard work. And anytime you're for a full-time professional race team, you're looking at the whole Saline program. We were, a short day would be 14 hours. We were typically 16 to 18 hours days during the season. There's so much work to do. But, thanks to Steve and his foresight and me working my tail off, we achieved great things. '87, we came back and pretty much dominated the GT class. We walked away with all 4 national championships in one season, which is a pretty big feat. But that's after we had to completely re-engineer the cars, because the '86 cars were, I got to tell you, they were terrible race cars. The strength of the Mustang was its incredible robustness and durability. Okay, the cars were so strong and so robust, we could run them absolutely as hard as they would go for 24 hours with very, very few problems. Where we were racing against Porsche and some other cars, and if you run them in the 944s, I think back then, and if you really run them as hard as they go, that was the only way we could compete with them, just run hard. We had really good motors. we had terrible brakes. I mean, terrible brakes. The front brakes were discs about this big, and the back were drums. We had to do a lot of brake changes. I thought, well, I'm going to be really clever. A friend of mine worked on some Daytona 24-hour teams, and he got me a set of brake pads off, I think, a 962 Porsche endurance pads, which actually we cut them off and we put them onto a Mustang backing plate, and they would actually go the full race without the pads having to be changed. Unfortunately, we had to change the rotors 3 times because it just ate through the rotors. But the other bad thing is with the drum brakes in the back. About every I can't remember now, second or third pit stop for tires and fuel, I'd have to slide under the back of the car with my little tool, and I'd have to adjust the rear brakes up. Otherwise, it would have no brake pedal. And I think that the thing that in the 24 Hours of Canada, I think the one thing, if there's anything I can point to aside from everybody working really hard that helped us win that race, is in the middle of the night, Desiree was in the car, and she was just in. She weren't changing drivers. She was just getting tires and fuel, and she was in the pit. She was in, and the car was jacked up, and I was under the back adjusting the brakes. And the team in front of us, we were pretty novice that year, but we worked hard at being organized and really had our stuff together. The team in front of us were just, this is at Mosport, total amateurs. It was like, I don't know if you're old enough, any of you guys are old enough to remember the Keystone Cop. They just run around in circles, just like crazy, driving nuts. Well, at one point during the night, one of the drivers, completely consumed by the red mist, got his helmet on, he jumps in the car, he gets all buckled up, and he takes off with the fuel nozzle still in the car, pulled the entire fuel rig over into pit lane. As soon as I saw that, I just yelled, "Get her out of here." And she tiptoed through a huge pool of gas and got beyond that just as they closed the pit and wouldn't let anybody move. So she just barely got out of the pits in time because pit lane was closed for I don't know how many laps. But fortunately, we got enough gas in Desiree that she was able to, the full course yellow went for a long time. The pits were closed for a long time. If we hadn't got her out when we did, she'd have been stuck there. And I think we probably would have finished second rather than first. So that's kind of one of those little things that you look back and you go, oh my gosh, that was so close to disaster. So I'm sure Mike's out there, maybe out there somewhere, and he'll probably have a story or two.
Actually, Kenny, I have a couple, just a comment. Since you're on the sleeves right now, I'll just ask you. James White asked, what was the rear suspension setup on the 86 cars? He's coming from the Speed Therapy Society Facebook group.
It was a stock Fox. You look at the geometry, like we talk about geometry in the academy. The rear roll center was like 18 inches above ground, which meant the cars did this all the time. It was a production-based class, which meant you couldn't change anything. Which in 87 we worked around that. But 86 the cars are pretty much just bone stock, except we had really good engines. A friend of mine, Bill, in Omaha, was a great engine guy. And to the point where the engines, I spent days going through hundreds of, rockers, valve rockers, just picking the ones that had just a little bit more lift than all the rest of them, because everything had to be stock. But we put a lot of effort into them. And then I think we're running Coney shocks that year, and the standard Celine springs, whichever come on the Celine production cars, because that's what we're supposed to run, was production cars. Well, I came up through the season. I came up with a whole list of things for Steve that we needed to change for the production car for 87. Now, in 86, one of the things we did to try to make the cars turn better is Road Atlanta. This car showed up with a 3-point strut tower brace on. First 3-point strut tower brace in modern era Mustangs. And they actually worked. The cars really helped them turn a lot better. The thing was, the SCCA tech guys came and say, wait a second, you can run those for this race,
Mm-hmm.
but don't bring them back because they're not part of the production car. Okay, so needless to say, the 87 production cars had 3-point strut tower braces. And the other thing that happened in 87 is towards the end of 86, we were working with the engineers at Ford in the Fox group. It was Fox, T-Bird, I think Mark 8 or something like that, in the X Garage. And one of them, Mike Jones, was working in suspensions, and he would spend his evenings, we'd be on the phone in the evenings, and he would like run different simulations on the computer on like front suspension geometry to get the cars to turn. And we came up with some ideas, but we really couldn't do anything until 87. And, Celine, in all his magical ways of making things happen, I can't remember, it was the second race or so in 87 that I got a call from the airport that there was some parcels out there to be picked up. Came in by a private plane. Here were 3 brand new K members right out of the flat factory that had 0 holes in it. No holes whatsoever, just all metal. So I spent an entire evening putting all the holes in the K members where I wanted them, based off of what Mike and I had figured out with the Ford computers as far as geometry. And when I got done, all painted up, I mean, they looked just like a brand new factory K member. But every single hard point was moved. But that in combination with the 3-point strut tower braces and springs, the cars really would turn. One of the things that I did is Steve sent me, the manufacturer has to fill out what's called homologation papers. They have to fill out this sheet of specifications on what's in the car. So for 87, they sent me the homologation papers to be filled out. And I won't go into all of this. There's some things, the way I listed them gave us some room to make things happen. One of them was on the springs. For the springs, the only specification for spring they had was the free length and the wire size. Okay, that was it. Free length and wire size. I had 3 different sets of springs wound at different coils that I had 3 different spring rates, all that met the specifications for height and wire size, which is another little trick. The 87 cars were really good. And I think one day, Rex and my son Paul kind of maybe accidentally moved some of the pickup points in the rear suspension. I'm not sure that, I didn't see that, so I have plausible deniability. But we made the 87 cars work. So yeah, stock suspension, 86, 87, we came a long ways in making them a lot better. But I can tell you, 86 cars were not good race cars. They were durable as hell. You just run the piss out of them all day and all night, but not particularly good at racing. In fact, the best way to slow a Mustang down was just pull up behind the Corvette and rest on the back bumper and wait for them to slow down. So, okay, I probably should move on.
Well, actually, I thought I'd ask just one more thing. Mike texted me and said, "Hey, can you tell a little story about the Hertz? Is it Hertz rent-a-cars? What you did with the rent-a-cars?"
What we did with back then, budget was always a problem. So any of the races that we did, anybody that flew in had to rent a Mustang. So we'd have parts cars, which really came in handy more than once. Yeah. You talk about, it's parts department on wheels. So more than once we had to go to our rental cars to sort of borrow a few parts to make it through the race, which we did more than once. So that was kind of like our, we had every race we had a new parts department, so to speak. So you got to do what you got to do. It's all about winning.
Okay, we have one more question right now on the Celine. And please, if you have any other Celine questions or any comments, just add them to the chat. The next section Kenny's going to be going over is from the private Speed Therapy Facebook group. That's his own Facebook group. And in there, every week, he asks a question, what people want to talk about. And so the next section, he'll be answering questions from that.
Because the thing is, I talk about what you guys want to learn about. We take the questions that come in through the Speed Therapy, Kenny Brown Speed Therapy Society private Facebook group. Got it all in. Questions that come in through there. What rich people calling in and asking. That's the content. That's how I structure Cars and Coffee. Is because I talk about what you guys want to learn about. Just like somebody was asking about the forward bite and anti-squat. So that's if you can always send in questions through there, or again I can answer them live. So that tells me we're moving up into the question section.
Yeah, actually, we can move up in the question section. That's fine. And then we have a couple of questions about the Celine Mustang. So we'll answer them afterwards when you answer your questions live.
Okay. So this is from actually Brian's question came in through Facebook and I didn't see it at the time. But he was, and I'm gonna have to do a little one of these at Brian because he obviously didn't remember what we talked about in the Speed Therapy Academy when we were talking about the driving. But he says, what are the best shock settings for driving in the rain? He's got a Roush 427 with AGS 4.5 on it. And here's the thing, in the rain, what you want to do, you just want to soften up the car completely. If you're racing in the rain, you want to undo at least one side of the front sway bar. In our cars, there is no rear sway bar because what I do with geometry, we throw the rear sway bar away. But you want to unhook the sway bar, and you want to take all the bump out in most of the rebound and just soften up the car. I mean, that's the best way to drive in the rain. I had one event. I think this is New Jersey. Back when I was engineering, I engineered 3 cars in the Mustang Challenge, and it was in New Jersey. It was kind of like it was raining, but the forecast was it was going to stop raining before the race was over. So I kind of took a chance, and I did kind of like half setup. I can't remember exactly what I did. I think I took the bump out, softened the shocks, but left the sway bar hooked up. And in the rain, this is on Ben's car. On the rain, he was actually, he was keeping up with everybody. It wasn't a problem. But as soon as it started to dry out, he actually started, going forward because I had sort of like a halfway setup. So, and that's one thing, you take a guess, and make your best guess. And that really worked out because he didn't lose anything in the rain. And once the track started drying, he really picked up some spots. So, yeah, you just want to soften up the car. Now, Rory says, as in drag racing, placement of the diff cooler, trans cooler, is it always best past the diff is not to potentially create a wild trip down the track via a trail of lube or a leak? My thoughts. Well, first of all, my thoughts is for drag racing, you really don't need a diff cooler or a tranny cooler. The second thing is you put coolers all the way back there, and you've got first of all, real estate problem, where they go. Secondly, you've got an airflow problem. The fact, I would never worry about a cooler leaking. If you're going through and doing your nut and bolt and checking everything over, if there's the beginning of a leak, you just got to fix it. But even worse, not so drag racing, just think about road race cars. If they spring a leak, that's even worse. So I wouldn't even worry about that. Wouldn't put any thought into that whatsoever, because it's it's the possibility of having a catastrophic oil leak on the drag strip are like less than minuscule. Okay, here Victor wants to know if we have any rear shock tower braces for the Fox body. I'm going to answer this sort of yes, and the reason it's sort of yes is the issue with Fox bodies is back then their production tolerance was like wide a lot. What we have found is we designed the rear shock tower brace for the SN95 Mustangs specifically when the IRS came out, because we converted them onto coilovers and we're putting all the load of the spring and the shock into the rear shock towers. So that's when we create a rear shock tower brace for that. In the Fox cars, I can tell you that in some cars they will be loose, in some cars they will be tight. They're just, that there's so much production variances. For the ones that are loose, it's just really simple. Make it however loose it is. Just make a thin plate. Make a plate out of aluminum or steel. and leaves longer bolts and just bolt it in. For the ones that are a little tight, you know, get your big BFH and just kind of whack it so you can squeeze it down in there. But they sort of will fit, but they don't fit them. Every now and again, you get one that just drops right in. I'm just saying there are such huge variations. You might have to do a little modification, but you know, like with the race cars, you know, whatever you got to do to make it work is whatever you got to do to make it work. You know, that's just the way it is. Okay, Kathy wants to know a rule of thumb about torquing suspension bushings. Should they be on a drive-on lift or while suspension's unloaded? Here's the thing: with anytime you take a control arm off and putting your bushing or putting it back on, you always want to tighten or torque those bolts when the car is at ride height. Okay, if you've got like rubber bushings, and say the car is up on lift and you know, wheels are hanging down, and you tighten them up, what's going to happen is that's going to lock that in place. So when actually you put the car down, it's going to come up, it's going to preload. The rubber is going to twist and going to be preloaded. It's going to add some spring rate, which is never a bad thing in a Mustang. But more importantly, because the bushings preload, it's going to wear out like really fast. And the same thing, even with urethane bushings. And remember, urethane bushings, if you've been with me before, only work up and down. You never want to use urethane bushings on rear control arms to twist because they'll bind and the back of the car will get loose. But anything you just move straight up and down, like front bushings, are good for urethane. Even with those, you want to make sure the car is at ride height when you tighten everything up. So that takes care of that. And Roger, setting up my new adjustable sway bar. What do I need to know about adjustable end links, preloading the bar, installation tips, etc.? Well, the first thing is you never, ever, ever want to preload a front sway bar. The reason we have adjustable sway bar end links is so that when the car's at ride height, you can take the end link and it needs to be slide right into the hole, whether it's a sway bar or the control arm, with zero preload. If you don't have ABS and you have a preloaded front sway bar, there's a really good chance under hard braking you're going to lock a tire. I mean, that's the last thing you want to do. So sway bars should have zero preload on them whatsoever. And that's why we have the adjustable end links, so you can adjust it so it just drops in the hole, you know, without any effort. And the other thing with sway bars, you always want to be sure that you use the really good, this is for like aftermarket sway bar and urethane. You always want to use the specific urethane grease for urethane sway bars. And you don't want to like smear tons of it in there. You just want a good surface. And anything that squeezes out, you want to wipe it off. Just simply because it's petroleum based and it'll collect dust, and the dust will migrate in and turn to sandpaper, which means if you hear a sway bar bushing squeak, take them apart, clean them out, get all the junk out of it, re-lube and put them back in. I look at urethane bushes as a maintenance piece because you continually have to clean them and make sure you have fresh grease in there. So I think now going down the list, now Omar has a question about torsons and rear gears in his GT500. And also we had another question about choosing the right gear ratio, rear gear for 5 and 6 speed transmissions. I think because we've got so much this week, I think we'll put that off to next week. So that'll be one of the subjects from next week. We'll talk about rear gears in a car. So I think I got through the questions. What's left on my, haven't I covered yet? Celine, private, seats, questions. Okay, the speed therapy. I mentioned Speed Therapy Academy coming up a couple times. This will be the 3rd Speed Therapy Academy. And if you get value out of what I talk about on Saturday mornings, or even in some of the workshops I do, but you really, really want to learn more, I highly recommend the Speed Therapy Academy. It's a 16-week course, 2 nights a week. It's Zoom, so everybody, we talk back and forth. And I really take all the subjects I talk about, especially the 5 C's, chassis, suspension, wheel, tires, brakes. We take each one of them, break them down, go deep, take like an entire evening just on shock absorbers. We can spend, I think, 2 weeks on suspensions, 2 weeks in aerodynamics, 2 weeks on setting up a car and driving it to track. So, I mean, there's a lot that goes into them. You really want to learn, but the whole objective is when you come through the Speed Therapy Academy, you have a complete, total understanding of how the car works. How the car works how all the systems work, how they relate together, how you can adjust the car to make it work better, and also how to drive. The last 2 weeks, I think we put into driving, and we actually do some virtual online driving coaching. So, I mean, if you really, really want to learn how to do all this, it's sign up for the Academy. And you get a nifty little notebook. And the reason for that is each week there's a PowerPoint, and there's like a notebook and paper so you can make notes. But you can also go back and the PowerPoint, the entire episode actually lives in the resource section, so you can go back and watch it again and again, because we have guys that say that, I go back and watch it the second and third time. It's like, how did I miss that? How did I miss that? So, I mean, it's an amazing resource. You really learn a lot. And Brian obviously forgot or didn't check his notes on ring driving, because we did talk about softening up the car. I went a little more detailed than I did right now, but that's kind of like the general gist. And then let's see, I think, Carrie, I've gone down my list.
Well, I think you have two. One thing we forgot to mention is that some of the happenings around Kenny Brown is the big article on the K-Link in Mustang Hub.
Is that out yet? Do you know?
I don't know. I haven't seen it yet, but Mark Houlihan is in the audience. Woo, woo. So, Mark, can you comment? I think you're close to the situation. Can you comment if it's out yet? We haven't seen a copy of it yet, but it's supposed to be out this month. So that should be pretty interesting. And again, if you want to find out more about the K-Link, you can register for Kenny's to get the replay from his live event. The registration link should be in the comments. We're taking questions now, and if you have any questions on the Sling car, any questions that you want to ask Kenny, just put them in the comments and he will answer your questions live. Another thing that we offer is he has a 15-minute consult. So if you're interested in signing up and talking to him one-on-one on one of your issues you're having with the car, or a build plan, how you want to put your car together, sign up for one of those 15-minute consults, free consults with him, and he will spend so as well worth the price of admission, right, Kenny?
Yeah, free.
So anyway,
that's what. A lot of times we'll get questions like on Saturday that are just a little more complex and need just a quick answer. And like I say, you can sign up for a 15-minute consult where I'll spend some time with you so we can answer your questions in a little more detail. Or if you got setup questions, parts questions, the car is not working right questions, sign up. I'll be happy to talk to you. And if I can answer your question, I will. And if I don't know the answer, I got an engineering brain. I have no idea how to BS. So all you're going to get is real information. If I know it, I'll tell you. If I don't, I'll tell you that too. So, what we forgot to talk about is next week we're going to push those questions off on the rear gears to next week. But also we've got a little piece on the new diff cooler for 550 IRS diff cooler for the 550 Mustangs. And then I think we're going to talk about the RPM Act again next week. And if you don't know what the RPM Act is, I suggest you look it up. It's the EPA is kind of like out of control, and the RPM Act is enthusiasts and people putting pressure on the EPA. Basically, they want to prevent anybody from turning a street car into a race car. Government's getting way too aggressive on some of this stuff. So we'll talk about that more next week. So, you ever get an answer back from Mark, Carrie?
I have to look. I have to go all the way down to the bottom. So one thing I wanted to add a comment to, I'll look right now, is the seats in the back are Brian West, and he's from the Speed Therapy Academy and a very accomplished driver. He does a lot of track events. We have a lot of
that's actually his seat back there.
Yeah. So, and part of the reason that it's sitting back there is he came in for a complete Kenny Brown 4.5 suspension upgrade on his car. And he ordered seats at the same time, and they have been behind. Do you want to talk about that for a minute, Kenny? Did you mention that?
Yeah, well, the seats when they actually came in, they had the wrong seat bottom. I mean, there was no hole in the seat bottom, so he couldn't put a harness in there. So the seat bottoms actually came in, I think, either Wednesday or Thursday this week. So we thought we'd put it together real quick, and we put it up there and talk about seats. And just a lot of times I just happen to talk about the things that we've got in the shop at the time. and we had the seats, so that's why we talked about it.
Okay, so are you ready for questions? And Mark,
I am ready for questions.
Must have stepped away because he's not in the room right now. So
Okay, I got my question answering head on.
Okay, this is from Mark, actually, or just a comment. He said, I ran Cobra Daytona seats with Schroet Rally 4 ASM belts in my Fox for over 20 years. Great seats for daily use. And those of you, most people probably know who Mark Houlihan is, but he was the editor of Mustang Monthly for years and years, correct?
Yeah, actually, he's been around a long time. He's been in a lot of different magazines, and somebody we've known for a lot of years.
Yeah, he was one of the first guys that went to a track event with you, that first media. So, I can't see the name of this person. It says Facebook user from where I'm looking, but it says this will be my first time there. They're talking about a trip to Topeka. So that event's coming up pretty soon. Yeah, a lot of people are talking about that and going. Let's see. 10:23. Here's our next question. Fill in the gap, Ken. I'm rolling down here. Here's from Rory. Kenny, have you located them old photos of them Explorers you modified you were mentioning?
Yeah, actually, yes. Just when I was down in the basement going through the masses of posters and pictures to get the sling thing, they were down there. I'll try to make a mental note to bring some of those articles, see if I can bring them next week.
Okay, so we will add that to the list for next week. I think we said that about 2 weeks ago. Rory, I apologize, but we had a couple of encore presentations. So the next thing, Mark also mentions, look for a review of the new K-Link in the next issue of the Mustang Hub magazine as well. So that was earlier on in the show. We also have, hi, Calvin, good to see you here. Okay, here we go. I'm going to, this is somebody who's listening later. Definitely want to hear more about the 86 cars. Can't shake the look of the 85, 86 problem. Probably never sell mine. So it was just a comment. This is on replay, so you'll be able to find it on Facebook and on the Kenny Brown Performance TV YouTube channel. There's 70 episodes you can watch there.
I can't believe we've done 70 episodes.
I know. Here's a question about the slings. Was there any help for the SBO for rear brakes, etc. back in '86?
Not in '86, but in '87 we had rear disc brakes. It was actually, I think it was the Mark rear axle assembly, the entire axle assembly that had the rear disc brakes. So in '87 we did have rear disc brakes, which was a huge help. So we as far as SVO back then, I mean, we worked very closely with some of the engineers there in trying to make the cars as good as they could. I think one of the things we did do in '86, I can remember these things. We actually had 3 different processors with different fuel maps in them. So we could, we tried them, different ones, and we always went back to the ones that had the best fuel economy, not the best power. Same thing with the rear end ratio. We had it run 308s in them. And I think we tested it at one track. We tested 308 against a 355, and the 355 was a little quicker off the corners. The downside is there was a lot more shifting that happened. The drivers had to shift more, and at the end, the lap times were really similar, but the fuel economy went down with the 355s. That's what we stuck with the 308s, is to get that fuel economy, because the trick to endurance racing is just making laps. You can't be making laps if you're in the pits getting gas. So everything we did was based off of economy and keep the cars running making laps. Okay. Any more questions?
Yeah, I have another question from our Bridget. So Bridget is a female drag racer, obviously with the name Bridget, that did pretty well. And she's on our team now. She works social media. And she has a question for you about the Sling programs. And she was kind of joking about this, but I know you have an answer. Who were the better drivers, the girls or the guys?
I mean, that's kind of better is a really subjective kind of thing. I would say surprisingly, Desiree was right up there. I mean, I think Desiree was every bit as quick as Steve. Steve was a little quicker than Rick. But the two drivers that we had that were the two best drivers were Scott Pruitt and then also Pete Halsmer. They were really quick. But the thing about I always use Desiree to get my way. Because a couple of races, I'd want to run a certain setup in the car, and Steve was always worried about, because I had all these spring things going on. He didn't realize you couldn't tell the difference based on the rules. Couldn't tell the difference. Anyway, I would always want to set the cars up a certain way, and Steve would want to set the car up a different way. So what I would do is, I think it was like in Mid-Ohio one time, I set Steve's car up the way he wanted it, and I set Desiree's car up the way that I wanted it. And we went out and then practiced. Desiree was like 2 seconds quicker than Steve. So he just came back. I want what she has. So, yeah, and Desiree was really good. Lisa was steady. Lisa always started the race. And the reason we didn't have Desiree was quicker, we didn't have her start the race because she was so intense. She would just attack right out of the gate. And she was better if she went in second when the race was already going on, or Lisa was really steady. So you always had Lisa start the race, and then Desiree would come in. And typically we'd have Steve start the race, and then Rick would come in after that. So, I mean, and the whole who's better, and who's better in the dry, the wet, the light, the dark. And they were all decent drivers. I think Desiree was a standout, though, as well as Scott Pruitt and Pete Halsmer.
Speaking of drivers, Kenny has been having conversations with Rick Titus, and we're going to have him on the program probably within the next month or two. So stay tuned for that. If you want to learn everything about what's going on in Kenny Brown, join the Speed Therapy Society Facebook group. That's Kenny's group online, where all the information shared, or else on YouTube, click the subscribe and get notification links, and you will receive that information. Here's Tim Tomasek. Hi, Tom. Or Tim. That's easy to do, isn't it? Tim, thanks for the Celine story. Steve was in Michigan this weekend at the Motor Bella car show at the M1 concourse with a trailer full of displays, including the current Mustang white label. And then he has another question for you. Celine has branded his suspension as Racecraft suspension in his S197 conversions. Any KBDNA in the Racecraft?
I really don't know. I mean, like my stint with Steve was 86 and 87. And even back then, they were called Racecraft suspensions. But there's been so many people in the program and so many different things that I have no idea. I would guess that most of what I did was sort of like secret, and much of that didn't really carry over, other than maybe the spring race. But I just don't have an answer for that. Even back then, they called it Racecraft suspension, and it's just it's a marketing name. For their suspension systems, and I couldn't even answer what's in it right now. So I just don't have a good idea.
Okay, so we are doing last call and questions. We're already running 10 minutes late, Kenny. He usually does an hour show. You guys are getting your money's worth today. So if you have any other questions, this is last call for questions. Add them to the comments area. Here is J. Todd Anderson. What are the best street performance tires for a 92 Cobra 17x9 wheel 88 Mustang?
It's kind of like a really big open question. This day and age, there are so many good tires out there. It depends on really what you're looking for. What I use, the type of tires that I use that we've had good luck with is for like a street tire. A really good street tire, the summer tire that you can take to the track, is the Michelin Pilot Sport, I think S4 or 4S. That's a pretty nice tire. For our track day cars, we use the Pirelli P0 Corsas. That's a track/street tire. So, but there are so many good tires out these days. I mean, and even there's like these categories that have opened up in recent years, like the 100 tread brake, rate, 200 tread wear rate. And you just, you can do some research and just see, but, any of the major brands anymore are good tires. I mean, the tire industry has just, come in the last 20 years, come leaps and bounds forward in making good tires. But what size wheel did he have?
I think it said, I need to go back to that question. He had you asked me questions on the spot, Ken.
You took it down.
Yeah, I did take it down, and now I can't find it. He had a 17 by 9-inch wheel.
Okay, a 9-inch wheel diameter. You're probably looking at a 255 as the 245 or 255. I always put the biggest tire I can get on there. Would be like on a 9-inch wheel. But you actually, to see how big of a tire you can get on a wheel, if you go to a site like Tire Rack, and you click on a tire and you put a size in there and click on the specifications, you can go down and see they will list what size wheel the dimensions were measured on, like an 8, 9, 10, whatever. And then they'll also give a range of wheel sizes for a tire, like from 8.5 to 9.5. So, I mean, you can always figure out what's the widest tire you can get on a 9-inch wheel by going to something like that. But I think for a 9-inch wheel, about 255, 255/35, I think would be a good tire for that. Some 265s might fit, and if you go to a 275, though, you would need a 9.5. So, but just you can, like I say, there's great tires out there anymore. Back when we did the sling cars, and the choice of tires were pretty slim. So, okay, any more questions, Gary?
No, we just have one comment from Jeffrey Williams. I have used Kenny Brown products over the years in my Fox body and love the products.
Well, we appreciate that. I mean, I thoroughly think that we've got the best products out there for a couple of reasons. Number one, my massive amount of experience, and secondly, the fact that I put so much effort into actually engineering and developing this stuff. And we don't bring stuff to market unless it's ready. Unlike a lot of people that just manufacture parts to manufacture parts, they can try to sell you something. That's not what our program's about. And just like this K-Link, the K-Link that we introduced has been in the works since the late 90s. Okay, and we spent over 2 years of hard competition on track testing to kind of prove the durability out. So, like I say, I mean, my stuff is so different. I mean, if you look around the aftermarket, my stuff's completely different than everybody else. And I think that has to do with, what I've been doing all my life and the fact that I put so much effort into the engineering part of it. Okay, I appreciate the comment, though. It's just like, I really enjoyed the Fox days. We introduced so many products in the Fox cars that we were first to market with that now are kind of like standard. Everybody's copied them, and it's kind of like a chuckle. We should just do a full list sometimes of things we were first to market with that everybody's copied.
Okay, so here we go. Next week's tech topic is how to choose the right gear ratio for a 5-speed and a 6-speed, and also how to choose the right gear ratio for different size tires. And for the show and tell segment, we are going to be doing, Kenny's going to be showing his new IRS rear differential cooler for S550s and the universal kit for the SN95 IRS. Okay. So,
well, if there's no more questions, I made it through without too much coughing today. I'm pretty happy with myself.
Woohoo!
So, yeah, it's been a miserable, wet, damp morning, which always has a tendency to aggravate my asthma a little bit. But,
okay, so
I apologize for not being very clever with my drawing. In fact, I was trying to get ready for this. I had spent so many times trying to do a straight line. I just gave up and put pinstripe tape on there because I couldn't draw a straight line. So, but anyway, if you really want to learn about geometry, sign up for the academy because I teach you things that you're not going to find anywhere else. You also learn how I develop my geometry, and you learn some secret stuff that you're not supposed to tell anybody else. So with that, okay, I guess we can pretty much wrap it up for the day. Listen, I appreciate everybody showing up. I hope you learned something. And that's the whole idea behind this, is to share with you what I know, and not just stay away from the internet and the paddock. Two worst places to get information. It's like it every time. So anyway, listen, I really appreciate you showing up. Thank you for coming, putting up with me. I hope you learned something, and be sure to join us next week. And if you want to go back, check on some past episodes. Kenny Brown Performance TV, YouTube, all 70 of them there, plus a whole bunch of other tech videos. So again, thanks for joining us, and we will see you next week. Have a